It's Song Talk Radio.
Welcome to Song Talk Radio. This is the show with songwriters talking to other songwriters about the craft of songwriting. We share tips, tools, and techniques, and together we all become better at writing songs. I'm your host, Neil Modi, and filling in for Phil Emery tonight, our co-host of the Song Talk Meetup and singer-songwriter, Sherry Jacoby. How are you, Sherry?
Hey, I'm good. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you on the podcast again. It's been a long while since you've been with us on the podcast. I think last time was in the before times, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was actually just looking back at that. I think it was 2021. With Jellyfish Interrupted.
Oh, that's right. We did do a Jellyfish Interrupted.
Virtual.
So full disclosure, Sherry and I are in a band together called Jellyfish Interrupted, which we haven't done anything in a while.
Yeah.
For our listeners, please send your comments and questions to @SongTalkRadio on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or feedback at songtalk.ca, and we'll share your thoughts on the show. And please visit us, songtalk.ca, to see the show post for this episode, to find links to resources we mentioned, and to download lyric and chord sheets to follow along with the songs that we feature, which you're certainly going to want to do tonight. Tonight, we are happy to welcome back to the show Susan Cattaneo, award-winning singer-songwriter and music educator at Berklee School of Music in Boston. And tonight we're going to be talking about two of Susan's favorite songs and what makes them so great. Welcome back to Song Talk Radio, Susan.
Hi, how are you? I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you back, and thank you so much for joining us. And I know that we've done this format of a show where we've featured a long established songwriter on the show. He's been writing songs for a long time and has a very deep knowledge, of which Susan is definitely checks those boxes. To get their take on what they think are two really, really great songs, and songs that are worthy of study, right? As songwriters, as students of songwriting, lifelong students that we are, we want to make sure that we hear some of those classic songs that really have something to teach us. Because the two songs you picked, Susan, are of a previous generation, and I guess my first question for you is just to slant it a little bit and think: did you contemplate any contemporary songs, or did you automatically go back to picking two songs that were kind of classics?
Well, I think that the reason why I didn't choose modern songs is because I kind of feel like these were the people that did this kind of thing for the first time. We've only been in the rock and roll world of music, since Rock Around the Clock, right? Which came out in the 1950s, right? And so rock music and contemporary music, and as it developed into pop music, has really had a short life. It started in the 50s, kind of exploded with Elvis, and we kind of haven't looked back. And I like to go back to the ones who were the first ones to do it, because I think that they didn't have a template. If you look at somebody who I love right now is Harry Styles. I think Harry Styles is a wonderful, wonderful songwriter. And he uses a lot of these techniques that now seem like, well, of course, his chorus mentions the hook 3 times, or of course his chorus uses internal rhyme, or does something called prosody where the lyrics are matching what the emotional content of the song is. But who is the first person that actually did that? Because I think that is where my interest is, because I think that, that those were the pioneers of the music that we hear today. So that's why I didn't choose a more modern artist. That's what kind of went old school.
Okay. Yeah. I
Oh,
also had the thought that maybe you need, at least a couple of decades to really have the perspective on a song to say that this is really something that's long-standing. Is anyone going to be referencing Harry Styles 25, 30 years from now? Maybe,
because he's a really good songwriter.
Yeah.
So maybe, somebody else, I'm trying to think who else is really great. A lot of the really wonderful songwriters are actually writing for others. So I have a former student of mine named Amy Allen, who has written for Harry Styles and has written for Selena Gomez and has written for Justin Bieber. And, so she's incorporating a lot of the techniques that we teach at Berklee now into pop music. So all of her songs are really good because she's a really good writer. So, yeah. But it's funny because I love kind of modern music as well. But there's a different focus now, I think, since people started making their own tracks and people started becoming kind of mini producers, at-home producers. Mm-hmm. There's maybe less of an emphasis on lyric and more of an emphasis on rhythm and what we call the musical bed, which is cool and awesome. But that's actually probably a different kind of discussion, because then you would talk about like, how do you build a track? How do you, and that's different than like looking at the actual song by itself alone. A really good example, Bruno Mars's Grenade, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know that song. I love that song. Really awesome. There is a version of him doing that song with just a guitar and a keyboard player. And it's like one of these like live things. Go and check it out, because it's proof that Grenade has all the bells and whistles of modern pop music. It's got, multiple harmony levels. It's got doubling of the lead vocal. It's got, it's synth buried in there. It's got like probably multiple drum tracks. It's been sweetened, it's got compression on it. But when you hear him sing it live, it's actually just a really good song all by itself. So for me, some of these older songs, they're kind of stripped bare, and you can't hide behind great production when you only have guitar vocal, or you only have, guitar, drums, bass, and vocal. So that's another reason why I chose these songs. So
that makes sense. I love the stripped down versions of really produced pop songs. It's such a great feeling to hear the acoustic version, and sometimes it's even stronger.
Oh my God. Well, as I said, like check out Bruno Mars singing Grenade. It's so good. You're like, oh my God, this is a great song, even without all of that other stuff on it. It's so good.
Yeah. But like you say, the modern sensibility tends to, people dig that stuff. They dig the beat.
Yeah. Right, well, and I think, it's serving a different purpose, right? Yeah. So we're in like a kind of a time musically where, it's about kind of like moving your body to music. A lot of pop music is about kind of like rhythms and feeling it in your body. And I think as a result of that being so present, sometimes the lyric kind of is almost irrelevant. Not irrelevant, because I love lyrics. So for me, lyric are important. But I think they're not as important as the groove right now. Mm-hmm. So,
which makes me wonder how Adele gets away with like piano vocal ballad. It doesn't fit that formula at all.
No,
it really harkens back to an earlier thing. But anyway. Okay, so let's get into the first selection of yours. We start with the Joni Mitchell.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Canadian content?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Oh, Canadian, right? Of course. I did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Well, so how do you want to start? Like, how do you want to do this?
Well, why don't you, Susan, tell us a little bit about why you picked this song and what it means to you and what makes it so great?
Okay. All right. So there are lots of things. There's so many things in this song.
And the song first of all,
the song is called Little Green, which is on an album by Joni Mitchell called Blue, which I had on CD, and I just think it's kind of a masterpiece. It's kind of one of my favorite albums. And this song, it's a little song, right? It's not a big, long anthemic song. But what I love about it is, first of all, I love songs that have a story behind them. So for me, like that's like one of my favorite things when a songwriter's like, I'm like, why did you write the song? What's the story? Why did you write this? Mm-hmm. And so Joni Mitchell, at one point got pregnant. She was not married, and she had a baby and gave it up for adoption. Mm-hmm. and the baby is named Kelly. So Little Green is from Kelly Green. That's why that's the title of the song. So I love that aspect of it. And it's about a woman making a choice to give up a child for adoption and hopefully for a different and better life than she could have felt like she could have given her. So as a woman, I really think this song is super powerful. When we get to like the technological, so when I look at songs, when we call it analyzing a song. When I analyze a song, I'm looking for lots of different things. I'm looking for, what is the melody of the song? What are the chords of the song? What is the structure of the song? So when I say structure, it means what is the song form? Is it a verse chorus? Is it a verse refrain? Is it a verse pre-chorus chorus? And then within that, what is happening to make the song magical and musical? So for me, Little Green is a really interesting song because the title, Little Green, is located not only in a refrain position, meaning it's at the end of the verses, but it's also in the chorus section. So we have her repeating Little Green 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like it's in there like 10 times. So we know that what the song title is, it's brought really clearly to the forefront. And then she does this really, really amazing thing. And that is she uses internal rhyme. So internal rhyme is when you have a rhyme occurring within the line, right? And so like the rapper Eminem, for example, uses a lot of internal rhyme in his flow. And what internal rhyme does usually is it creates like a knit kind of feel, the song, because when you have an end rhyme, so da 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 car, da 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 bar, as the listener, you feel like, I'm resolved. I feel good. There's no tension. It didn't build up anything for me. It was like bar, and then it was car. I don't need to worry about that at all. And what happens with internal rhyme is that it kind of puts the rhyme in a different place than you expect it to be. So in that example, da 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 car, da 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 star, da 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 da, and you're like, oh wait, I heard a connection in there that was unusual, and that's what this song does throughout. So I'm going to kind of talk the lyric, I guess, is kind of a good way to do it, or anyway, the first line is born with the moon in Cancer. Choose her a name she will answer to. So we have Cancer and answer to. And so does this little thing where you kind of feel like it's resolved, but it keeps going, right? And then call her green and the winters cannot fade her. Call her green for the children who made her little green. Be a gypsy dancer. So dancer rhymes with cancer, which was the thing that we started with.
Yeah.
So it's this beautiful thing where like Cancer rhymes with answer. And then we have these other two lines, will fade her, made her, dancer. So it's this beautifully self-contained verse. And what's cool about this for all you songwriters out there is that you could actually chart this out on a piece of paper and write a song using this same rhyme technique. And it's really cool. It's really different. Another song that has that in it, just a little side thing, Tangled Up in Blue by Bob Dylan does the same thing. Has like an internal rhyme occurring right before the Tangled Up in Blue. It's super innovative and not what you expect. Then we have second verse. He went to California, hearing that everything's warmer there. So California and warmer, we're hearing the AR of that. And then, so you write him a letter, say her eyes are blue. He sends you a poem and she's lost to you, little green. He's a nonconformer, California, warmer. It just does the same thing. And a lot of songwriters, they'll get a really cool verse 1 And then verse 2 totally abandons all of that and just does something completely new and different.
Yeah.
And this is good songwriting because it follows the same pattern and yet to me doesn't feel boring. Then we get to one of my favorite choruses of all time, right? So we have the title Little Green. And so what is Little Green? So Little Green is obviously a little girl in this song, but then she uses metaphor to describe what little green is in such, for me, like, oh my God, listen to this chorus. So just a little green, like the color when the spring is born. I mean, that's great. There'll be crocuses to bring to school tomorrow. So crocuses tomorrow. Keep that in mind, rhyme-wise. Just a little green, like the nights when the northern lights perform. The northern lights perform. They're not just shining, they're performing. And then there'll be icicles and birthday clothes, and sometimes there'll be sorrow. So we have icicles, which goes with birthday clothes because we get the zzz of those two things. And we had crocuses to school tomorrow. Sometimes there'll be sorrow. So it just like it holds together like this beautifully, for me, like beautifully knitted songwriting lesson, right? And then, you know, for me, another thing that I love is really just it's a story song, right? Or it's a song that has movement through it. So we go through the I guess the terrible and difficult decision that Joni Mitchell had to make, right? So we describe the child in who she is in verse 1 and verse 2. And then in the middle section, Joni talks about the father of the child. And she says, where is it? Where is it? Oh no, she writes him a letter. That's also in verse 2. And then verse 3, we get her perspective. And I think for me, this is like super touching. She goes, child with a child pretending. So she is the child who has a child pretending, weary of lies you were sending home. So pretending, sending home, get the same thing. Cool. So you sign all the papers in the family name. You're sad and you're sorry, but you're not ashamed of little green. Have a happy ending. So pretending, sending, happy ending. And then we go to the chorus again. So for me, like this is just, I love the way it's constructed. I love the fact myself personally, I love songs that have strong visuals. And so this song has that. It has so many strong visuals in it. I also love songs that are, you know, I get a lot of students who say, hey, you know, I don't want to write anything specific because I want my song, I want everyone to be able to relate to my song. So I'm going to be as generic as possible. And I am not a big fan of that because I think that what happens is that the more generic you are, the less opportunity you have to paint a picture for your listener and to give them a chance to walk into your world. I think of songs like it's like a Star Trek holodeck, you know, where there's like a door and you open into and you step into somebody's song. And I want to be able to see stuff. And if I see stuff, I can put myself in their shoes and experience that song for them. So this song does that, I think, in a beautiful way. It really like, there's so many details in here. I just love, you know, we know what year she's born because she was born with the moon in Cancer. Like we know that about her. We know that the father of her father went to California, Joni Mitchell's baby daddy. And then, as I said, going back to the little green, the color when the spring is born, like the night when the northern lights perform. I mean, it's just a little green, right? When you think of the northern lights, it's not like green. It's like just a little green in the sky. And I think like that is a beautiful way. So another thing for songwriters, is to think about like, if you were going, so these things they're similes. So it's like just little green, like the color when the spring is born, right? Like. So we're similes. So if you had a title, what could you say it's like? That could be a way to build a chorus, right? So, I hate you like the way that the sun hates the rain. That's a very lame answer, but like something else. Do you know what I mean? So you can use simile in your chorus in the same way that Joni Mitchell did, and come up with like a really cool way to kind of describe whatever your title is. And I guess that's like, for me, the beauty of songs and songwriting is that, I can take someone's song that I really admire and be like, what is the magic there? How can I take some of the DNA of that song and use it in my own way to make my own version of this and have it do some of the same magical tricks that this song does?
Yeah.
So that's, I'm all about that.
Yeah. That's a really tremendous analysis.
Is that too much?
No,
Did I do too much?
absolutely
It was
not.
great.
It's great because there is a lot to it, and it's interesting that you point out those things, because like I had never heard this song before you sent it to us, and and I've always found Joni Mitchell to be, like you say, a very fascinating and unique songwriter. The few songs that I've heard with like these really, really interesting melodies, and I'll be honest, I didn't notice the rhyme scheme in this thing, but now that you pointed out, it is really interesting, because you can only imagine if everything was perfectly rhymed at the end of each line, it would come across much more positive and much more sure and much more, much more poppy, which would, in a prosody sense, would not reflect the content of the song. So it's the sort of move that the way that the language is crafted, the way the melodies are crafted, all points towards the emotional content of the song, and that's very evident and strong. And even if you don't recognize consciously those details, they are there. Yeah. And if it was perfectly rhymed, you wouldn't get the same feeling.
Right. Well, and the other thing I think, and that's totally, I'm totally into like what you said, because I think for me, by having this internal rhyme that like continues on, it's like a tag every single time we say the rhyme, but then we keep going. It gives this feeling of lingering. I don't know. That's how I feel like the song, like we're lingering in this moment. Leaves you hanging. It does. And
it doesn't resolve. Yeah.
And you certainly had this sense of, someone's decision, how difficult that must have been. I don't feel like she was like, well, bye. Nice knowing ya. Here's my baby. Take my baby. Bye. Good night. Like, I really get the sense of like a woman's regret, a woman's kind of longing for knowing that she cannot provide the kind of life for her that she would want to, but still tied to her. And I guess that they reconnected, when Kelly got older, and, they're in touch now, which is good. So,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, Sherry.
Oh, I was just going to say, that's what really touched me about the song. I think the tension of just the sorrow of it. And she literally mentions the word sorrow and just how hard it was for her, but also the beauty of it, this hope of a happy ending and knowing that maybe it's for the best, that she could have a better life. But then the incredible sadness, like she holds that tension really beautifully.
Yeah.
Lyrics.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's take a listen to Little Green by Joni Mitchell, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more.
Born with the moon in Cancer, choose her a name she will answer to. Call her green, and the winters cannot fade her. Call her green for the children who've made her little green. gypsy dancer. He went to California, hearing that everything's warmer there. So you write him a letter and say, her eyes are blue. He sends you a poem and she's lost to you. Little green, he's a non-conformer, just a little green, like the color when the spring is born. There'll be crocuses to bring to school tomorrow, just a little green, like the nights when the northern lights perform. There'll be icicles and birthday clothes, and sometimes there'll be sorrow. Child with a child pretending, weary of lies you are sending home. So you sign all the papers in the family name. You're sad and you're sorry, but you're not ashamed. A little green, have a happy ending. Just a little green, like the color when the spring is born. There'll be crocuses to bring to school tomorrow, just a little green, like the nights when the northern lights perform. There'll be icicles and birthday clothes, and sometimes there'll be sorrow.
Okay, that was Little Green by Joni Mitchell.
And I just like, we didn't even talk about melody, and we didn't even talk about tuning. You know, she's playing an open G. There's a lot of like sus chords that don't resolve. And then there's, you know, the fact that she's built the chorus in odd number of lines, just a little green, like the color when the spring is born, tomorrow. So we have little green, tiny line, 2 long lines, just a little green. And the highest point in the song, which is normally the chorus, is actually in the back half of the verse. So that's really different and really interesting. So I'm sorry, we didn't even talk about that, but explore that too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, that's the thing that's always fascinated me about Joni Mitchell is the attention to detail in the melodies and how they're so unique and so interesting. But I'll be honest, I do find I do like her songs that are more highly structured. This song is very kind of meandering, and like you say, like lines kind of extend and lines are shorter, and it's a lot looser in terms of the patterns, in terms of the structure. Even there is, you know, a high degree of repetition there, but you know, I tend to prefer the ones that are more highly structured. That being said, the melodies are still fascinating. She's got such an expansive range, and you're right, she doesn't put the money notes exactly where you'd expect them. They're kind of they're consistent, but they're in unexpected locations. And it's like, that was different and interesting. You know, and it does. But learning about the emotional content of the song, it does make me wonder, like, you know, for her to just flat out talk about this with somebody after she experienced this trauma, it might have been too hard for her to express that way. And this is an amazing way for her to inject all that emotion and put it out this way, and then make other people cry.
Well, and if you think about the fact that, so what you're feeling as meandering, like, comes straight into focus every time we get to the hook. Just a little green.
Yes.
Nothing surrounds that. It is the same melody every single time. So she could go anywhere she wants to go, but as long as we get there, every single time we hear the chorus, I think that grounds the song.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I love how the chorus ties things together, like thematically, and just the contrast of the verses. You've talked about specific versus universal, right? The verses are so specific and really paint the story. And then there's this magical lift to this other world in the chorus where now it's a metaphor or a simile, and it just feels like another world. And then we're back to just the most specific feeling, like signing the papers, things like that. And then back to the magical lift. So that contrast is really cool.
Yeah. And if you, I mean, even like modern day people who are revered in kind of the Americana music, you know, Jason Isbell or Mary Gauthier, definitely borrowed from this style of songwriting. So this like detail list oriented thing. It's really effective.
Yeah.
So
it just brings to mind, we had a guest on the podcast just a couple of weeks ago, Civil Ray. She's a local Toronto-based singer-songwriter. And in a lot of ways, she has the same kind of approach to melody. Like very expansive, very not sing-songy in kind of a nursery rhyme type of way, like that reaches these interesting, different, unique places. And yeah, it's not that anyone doesn't do that anymore, but like we were talking about earlier, like, you know, like modern songs, like it's almost a default that you rhyme every line at the end, and the same number of syllables and the same number, like you want consistency, structure, and I fully admit I'm kind of brainwashed in that sense. I want to hear that.
Right.
You know, and I don't dig it when you're not doing that. It's like, where are you going?
Do you like have you heard Madison Cunningham?
No.
Oh, I like her a lot. You should check her out. She's kind of like a new thing, and she's really great player, great singer, great songwriter, really interesting melodies, super, you know.
Well, I mean, and again, it's the sort of thing where it's easy to get used to a song that's highly structured. It's not as easy to appreciate a song like this. It does take a few listens and someone like you, Susan, to analyze the Jesus out of it and notice all the wonderful details in it. Because even when we listen to it again now, I'm like, okay, now I'm appreciating it more. Just from what you had said about it, and again, just hearing it, you know, for now, like probably the fourth time now. It's starting to grow on me. It is starting to grow on me.
No, I liked it from the first time I heard it, but now there's a new appreciation knowing the internal rhymes that I also did not notice in the first two listens. So it's really cool. And I'm thinking of Just a Little Green. Imagine that was the tagline at the end. That would feel much more resolved, right? But the fact that it ends with There'll Be Sorrow does give it this so much more unresolved feeling.
Yes, totally.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, there was a lot of tension in this song, actually. It's not resolved at all.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, let's move on to your second pick, Susan. And this one, of course, is much more sing-songy.
I know. It does all those things. It's all like it rhymes everywhere you think it's going to.
And not say that's better or worse, but and undeniably, it is easier.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
It's way easier to access. Like, okay, I'm snapping to it. I'm grooving to it. It's all good, right? So, okay. So why don't you line this song up for us?
All right. So I have chosen The River by Bruce Springsteen as my second song to talk about. And I think, you know, so let's talk about Springsteen in general. So Springsteen, you know, it's almost like there is a codex or some kind of, like, there's a glossary that comes when you start listening to Springsteen music. You know, you are in blue collar America. You know that you're in a land where the factories are closing down. The worker doesn't need what he has. You know, the worker's not making enough money. There's usually a girl There's usually a car, there's usually some highways involved. And so, but I want you all to remember that before that happened, Springsteen was the first one to do all of that. Now it feels like, well, of course there's a road and a girl and, but he was the first one to kind of capture, and also I think really, maybe not the first one, because certainly like, the guy who wrote about the Dust Bowl, whose name I can't now remember, spoke for the common man. But I really think for the 80s, Springsteen, and late 70s, 78 is kind of when this came out, he spoke to a group of people in the United States who felt that, I don't think they felt like anybody was talking to them. So Springsteen really spoke for a generation of blue collar people who felt like their stories weren't being told. So super cool. I also chose the song because, like Little Green, this is really based in a personal story. Now, I don't always love songs that are based in personal stories, but I think that for songwriters out there, here are two songs that are very, very personal for the artists that wrote them, and were also very successful when they were released. So I think, for a lot of people who are trying to like write, I'm going to write a story about like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, even though I've never done that before. Like I would say, if you can, write what's close to home, because I think that you'll feel it more and it will be more authentic to you, and people can tell the difference between when you're singing and writing authentically and not. So this is a song about Springsteen's sister. So she is the Mary character in the song. But so the story of the song, it's a story song, first person story song. And as far as like song form, it's a verse chorus. So, and it has a bridge, but the bridge is actually super interesting. So we're going to talk about the bridge in a second. But so in the story song, it's about a guy who comes from a poor town, and he takes up with a girl named Mary, which is important. And we're going to kind of talk about that in a second. And they met in high school, and then she gets pregnant. And then he, like, essentially, they get married. He starts working in a factory, and they both become disillusioned with the world. That's pretty much the story of the song. And so the fact, first of all, I love the idea of the concept of writing to a metaphor as your main theme. So the song is called The River, and the river plays a major role in the song throughout. But symbolically, I believe that the river, because of a lot of things in the song, the river symbolizes rebirth. It symbolizes a kind of baptism. It symbolizes nature in a place where work and the factory life is really important. Then we have this beautiful nature thing that people can escape to. It also symbolizes youth and movement and things flowing. So it's really interesting what happens to the river in this song. So as far as rhyme scheme goes, it's what we call through written, which means that it's not a rhymed couplet. So it doesn't go da 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 star da 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 bar. That would be a rhymed couplet, matchy like Wonder Bread. They like line up, the pieces match. But it has through written, which means it goes da 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 da, and that second and fourth line rhyme every single time. So I come down from the valley. I come from down in the valley where, Mister, when you're young, they bring you up to do like your daddy done. So we have that going throughout. That doesn't ever change in the verse. Me and Mary, we met in high school when she was just 17. We drive out of this valley down to where the fields were green. And they go down to the river, and into the river we dive. oh, down to the river we'd ride. So these two young couple, they go down to the river and they dive into the river. Once again, baptism, rebirth, nature, right? Then in the middle verse, we go, then I got Mary pregnant, and man, that was all she wrote. And for my 19th birthday, I got a union card and a wedding coat. For me, that is the coolest part in the song, because I'm like, oh, he could have just said, I got Mary pregnant, and then got married and I got a job. But he doesn't say it. He says, and for my 19th birthday, I got a union card and a wedding coat. That says I had to get a job and we got married, but it doesn't say that. And I love the fact that like Springsteen always does a really good job of like implying what the story is without saying it, which I think is fabulous. And another thing that Springsteen does, which I love, is his verbs are really, really, really good. If you listen to Thunder Road, the verbs in Thunder Road are amazing. But in this song, he goes, we went down to the court. So right after, like, I got a union card and a wedding coat, we went down to the courthouse and the judge put it all to rest. That's such a great way to say that they got married, because it implies death, right? The judge put it all to rest. He didn't marry them. It's not like he said the judge, and then with the judge, we said, I do. That would have been a lame thing. That would have been okay. But, the fact that the judge put it all to rest, what do you put to rest? You put to rest like something that's going to be dying. So it's this beautiful kind of hint of what's to come. And then he goes, no wedding day smiles, no walk down the aisle, no flowers, no wedding dress. And that night, this couple, newly married, go down to the river, and into the river we dive. Oh, down to the river we did ride. Yeah. Then he gets a job working in construction for the Johnstown Company, but lately there ain't been much work on account of the economy. Now, all them things that seem so important, well, mister, they vanished right into the air. Now I just act like I don't remember, and Mary acts like she don't care. So we're like, right? It's not going well. These two young people who were so alive and vibrant and flowing, right, with creativity and potential in their life, are now stuck in this marriage. And then we change tempo. So it's a bridge, but it's the exact same chords as a verse. But suddenly we stuff it with more words, so it feels like the song speeds up a little bit and gathers a little more energy and momentum. And the lyric goes, but I remember us riding in my brother's car, her body tan and wet down at the reservoir. Notice, car, reservoir. We're suddenly in rhymed couplet. We've gone from through written to rhymed couplet. And then at night on them banks, I'd lie awake and pull her close just to feel each breath she'd take. Now those memories come back to haunt me. Highest part in the song. Memories come back to haunt me. Really, like, it's angst filled, right? They haunt me like a curse. Is a dream a lie if it don't come true, or is it something worse? That for me. So that's a really deep, deep, deep thought, right? He could totally have put that in the chorus because it's a kind of statement thing. But then I think it would have felt so intense and like heavy-handed. But by putting it in this bridge, sneaking it in at the end, he gets the deep, profound meaning of the song kind of tucked in right in the back. Then, after this fast-moving bridge that's with the same chords as the verse, we go back to, he goes back to the river, and the lyric goes, that sends me down to the river. So is a dream a lie if it don't come true, or is it something worse? That sends me down to the river, though I know the river is dry. That sends me down to the river tonight. Down to the river, my baby and I. Oh, down to the river we ride. So we have a character named Mary, Catholic, Virgin Mary. You can't not pay attention to that. Baptized in the river, married, unhappy, terrible job, terrible prospects, stuck in a life, and the river dries up. So for me, the idea of like taking the song from kind of like potential to desolation at the end is really effectively done. Now, unlike Joni Mitchell, Springsteen is not a great melody guy, not a great chord guy. I mean, it's like we're not finding complexity in the chords.
No.
We're not really finding complexity in the melody either. But what that does, by writing a simple melody and a simple chord structure, it allows the lyric to step forward and be the shining star. And, you know, so I love this song for all those reasons.
Right on. Yeah. Sherry, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I just love the line, is a dream a lie? Is a dream a lie if it don't come true, or is it something worse? And it just clicked while you were talking that the sentence kind of continues, that sends me down to the river. I didn't make that connection before. Yeah. So it's really cool.
Yeah, because structurally there it's very separate. It's almost first into chorus thing that makes it seem structurally like it's a separate thing, but it's cool that that's indeed connected. Yeah, I would even say he's maybe not as unique and interesting a melody writer, but certainly hooky. I don't know hookier, but certainly hooky enough that it's memorable. And especially like you say, Susan, with the simplicity of the first two choruses, we went down to the river, and the river we dive, down to the river we did ride, and without any, it's not very profound. It's just setting up the metaphor, right? And you read into it what you will, because I mean, the river as a metaphor, I don't know how overdone that is. I can think of now 3 songs at least that I know of that use the rivers and for completely different metaphors.
Yeah.
Right. So there is that. But just a solid song, because like you say, the chords are very simple. The melodies are simple. That doesn't make them bad.
Right.
But it really sticks with you. Okay, shall we take a listen?
Sure.
Let's do it.
I come from down in the valley where, mister, when you're young, they bring you up to do like your daddy done. Me and Mary, we met in high school, and she was just 17. We drive out of this valley down to where fields were green. We go down to the river, and into the river we dive. Oh, down to the river we'd ride. Then I got married pregnant, and man, that was all she wrote. And for my 19th birthday, I got a union card and a wedding coat. We went down to the courthouse, and the judge put it all to rest. No wedding day smiles, no walk down the aisle, no flowers, no wedding dress. That night we went down to the river, then into the river we dive. Oh, down to the river we did ride. Yeah. got a job working construction for the Johnstown Company. But lately there ain't been much work on account of the economy. Now all them things that seem so important, well, mister, they vanished right into the air. Now I just act like I don't remember. Mary acts like she don't care. But I remember us riding in my brother's car, her body tan and wet down at the reservoir. At night on them banks I'd lie awake and pull her close just to feel each breath she'd take. Now those memories come back to haunt me. They haunt me like a curse. Is a dream alive that don't come true? Or is it something worse that sends me down to the river? Oh, I know the river is dry. That sends me down to the river tonight. Down to the river, my baby and I. Oh, down to the river we ride.
Okay, that's The River by one and only Bruce Springsteen. Great pick.
A 1978 fade out.
1970. Good old fade outs.
Right? Who does that? No one fades out anymore. So another thing that's just really interesting, which I have never noticed, but I'm always interested in like point of view, because it's like, how can this story be told and what is the point of view? So I've always thought this is like, first person, I'm telling you a story, right? But what Springsteen has done, which I didn't even realize, is that there's a person that he's talking to named Mr. I didn't even realize that. I've come from down in the valley where Mr. when you're young. Mr. There's somebody there's a person that he's assigned to be the audience, the listening, which I think is really interesting and also a way to kind of really make the song intimate.
Mm-hmm.
And he does that again. There's like a Mr.
There's a second Mr. in there.
Yeah, Mr. They vanished right into the air.
Right?
Yeah.
It's very like conversational and folksy, which is I'd never noticed that until now. So it's cool. Yeah.
Listening to it now, the bridge is standing out even more, I think, as my favorite part. Like,
right.
It also sticks out. It takes us out of this story in the same way. And it's so much more emotional. And then, just the whole message of the song is really contained in there. Right. And I'm thinking about that line again. And just, it seems like the curse that he's referring to is just that hope, knowing how good it could have been and those good memories. It's like a curse to know that and now to have lost it. And going into the river now that it's dry, but still going there. It's even worse than just going to a place that's dry, going to a place that was once.
Exactly. Right?
There's a tragedy to the whole thing.
And so both songs have this sense of like regret. Why I chose two songs of longing and regret.
Right. But the difference with the Bruce Springsteen, of course, is they're very sing-songy.
Yeah.
It almost could have been a more positive lyric, but it's clearly not. And the bridge is really cool and emotionally wrought. But of course, the context, right? The bridge would not have that impact had we not, had the first meeting, had the wedding in the courthouse, had the job where he was not quite satisfied. All these little things that are not quite satisfying, and then come to their culmination,
Right.
in that latter part, where again, most people would probably put that heart of the song into the lyric and into the chorus rather.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
Right, but he
Well,
chose to delay it until a little bit later, so we can get a little more meat on the bone.
Mhm.
Because that's a lot of stuff to put into a chorus. The amount of
Right.
stuff he's got on that bridge.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think it would have been so heavy-handed. It would have been
Yeah.
so like, don't tell me like, ugh. It's also, I think it's important to note it's written in E natural minor. So it is written in E minor. I think I don't know if it's E. Yeah, I think it's E minor. But,
Yeah.
so it's definitely in a minor place always,
Mhm.
from throughout. So that I think is also kind of like, obviously, I guess, weaving a little bit of sadness through that, because we always resolve to a minor chord as opposed to a
I
major
guess,
one.
but for me, it's the occasional couplet rhyme,
Yeah, right. I know. I know. I know.
sing-songy
Yeah.
nursery
Yeah.
rhyme type of melodies. Like they're very, very.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels like.
Na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na.
But again, I mean, I think for a lot of songwriters, that's kind of a default.
Mhm.
Like you're going to do that whether you have a happy lyric or a sad lyric. You don't. Many songwriters, especially beginning songwriters, I mean, not that Bruce Springsteen is a beginner songwriter by any stretch, but a lot of beginner songwriters don't consciously think about the unification between the melodic content, the chordal content, and the lyric and the story. Right? I mean, I'm a victim of that from when the first few songs that I wrote. Happy bouncy music, dark lyric.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I've done that too. Yeah.
Well, there's something also really beautiful about that. I'm in
Totally
a
the
duo and we just sang the song In My Life, not In My Life, the one that goes, and heaven knows I'm miserable now. I was looking for a job and then I found a job, and heaven knows I'm miserable now.
The Smiths.
And it's the Smiths. Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so that's like a happy, like you're like, whoa, oh, he's miserable.
The Smiths were brilliant at this.
Right? It's so good.
Yeah.
It's like sad. It's like I think of it as like you're skipping gaily through a minefield.
Well, and a part of it, I mean, I did this actually with our songwriting challenge last year because I was going to a deep place, a dark place emotionally, and I went out of my way to say I'm going to make this upbeat, and I'm going to make many of the melodies a little bit. The melodies actually kind of pointed down in a lot of places as well, just to reflect that negative energy of the lyric, but the whole thing was a little more feel good than the lyric would suggest, and that was deliberate in order to sort of remove the curse, right? I mean, you got sad lyrics, sad music, sad melodies. You can like really, really depress your audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The contrast is nice sometimes, and it gives an added complexity to the song. If a song is not just one emotion, right? The more more emotions we can give to it, it can give it some more interest.
Which is amazing, especially when you investigate a song and you're like, okay, you're bopping along to it, it's great, and then years later you actually really investigate the lyric. I'm like, man, this is a sad song. I had no idea.
Yeah. It's so true. When I'm writing, I always, I think it's very easy. Or no, it's not. Nothing's easy, but it's sometimes easier to access the sad part than it is to kind of wrench it into something different. But I have to say, when I'm writing a song, I always, in like the beginning, when I'm starting to write it, I'm like, let's just try this like 20 BPMs faster. What happens when I do that to the song? Or what happens when I make it like even 20 BPMs faster than that? And we're like a rockin' song. And those songs, that song at 76 BPM or 120 or 138 are all different songs. They might have different meanings. They have the same title, but they might have a different slant. I've done this with my students where I'm like, I took a hook like watching the rain come down, right? And so initially we wrote it at 76 BPM, and it was like a blues song. It was like watching the rain fall down. It was like sad, and there was a piano and upright bass and that. And then I like changed the tempo to like 120. I was like watching the rain fall down. What does that mean? And it was like, oh, it's about, the students were like, it's about purification. It's about like, whoo, I'm leaving all that stuff behind. And I'm like, yeah, I'm watching the rain fall down because it's going to cleanse me. And so it became like this happy song about leaving the bad stuff. And then the instrumentation for that was electric bass, electric guitar, synth, electric drums. So it was like this total like pop confection. And then we sped it up to like 138. And it was like, okay, at that tempo, watching the rain come down was, I think it was like it was a little bit of the same thing, but it was more like, I'm leaving a man behind. So it was like, I'm just, he can cry and I'm watching the rain come down because I'm not going to like, I don't care. He can cry all he wants to. And it was a country song that like, was obviously had like pedal steel and all of those things. So same title, different tempo, totally 3 completely valid songs. So there isn't one right way or wrong way, but I think for marketing purposes, especially if you're trying to get songs cut by other artists, it's a lot easier to get a mid or up tempo song cut than it is to get a ballad. So, from a purely like, financial point of view, it's a good idea to take a title, even though you feel it's sad, and see whether it can exist at a faster BPM and have an equal life there. So
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it kind of, for me, it's kind of like, well, what do I want what do I want the song to be?
Right.
Do I want it to be super sad? Do I want it to be somewhere in the middle? Do I want it to be happy? Right. And just doing it with intention is all.
Totally.
Yeah, I think it's cool how you mentioned the songs transform kind of into different ideas. So part of it when I'm writing is I sometimes don't know what the song is, right? So there is sometimes a lack of intention where I'm figuring it out, and it reveals later what it wants to be, how fast it wants to be, or what it's about. Yeah.
Well, and for me, it's like I'll end up, God, I was writing this song. I don't know if it's the one I played when I was on your guys' show, but there's a song I wrote called Blackbirds. And
that was the one.
Oh, it was. Yeah. And I was just like, it was based on the nursery rhyme of 4 and 20 blackbirds. And I just wrote. It was like a Leonard Cohen song. It had like 45 verses. And I wrote like all the blackbirds. There were literally 24 blackbirds. Every single blackbird had like a thing and a name. And oh my God, what the heck? And I hated the song. It's like, this is like I've done a terrible thing to this really cool idea. And it was actually, I guess I needed to write all of that blah, blah, blah to be able to throw it all away and just keep the lines that really meant, and like actually giving the song space. But I think I needed to write, whatever, the whole series to get to like whatever the haiku was that it ended up being.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you need that. You need to take the song to its extreme in one direction to only to find out that that's not the right direction, and that really pulls you in the right direction, and sort of illuminates the right direction to go into. It's kind of process of elimination, almost. Maybe we can't do this. We can't do this. Okay, this must be the right way then.
Right. And isn't that such a painful and awesome experience?
It can
while
be.
you're writing it, aren't you just like, ugh?
Yeah. Especially if you save those earlier drafts, like you record them and stuff, and it's like, man, what was I thinking?
Yes, I know. I know. It's so true.
But that moment when it clicks is really good. Like I remember writing some song where I was stuck on the verses. I kept writing these horrible verses, and then something switched in my brain. I realized it's a chorus. What I've been trying to write as a verse actually makes sense as a chorus. So that moment is just so nice. But it's really painful to get there sometimes.
Yeah. I'm actually revisiting a song I wrote more than 10 years ago now, and I never finished it, so to speak. And listening to it again, I was like, man, that's a bad chorus. It was just, the melody was clunky, and I literally just jettisoned the entire chorus, rewrote it with a much more concise, catchier, more centrally focused thing, and I don't know if I'm happier with it. I haven't decided yet, but I think I'm happier with it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to have sat on a song for so long, and it's like, how can I put some new energy into this thing and make it something better?
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I think I'm trying to think of like, so I wrote this song one time that, you know, I liked the chorus, but the verses were all like, I don't know. I didn't believe it. And if I didn't believe it and I'm the songwriter, nobody else is going to believe it. I was just like lost. It was so metaphorical. I don't know what I was saying. And I normally, because I kind of work hard on my songs, and when I finish them, I feel like I've finished them. Like I don't usually go back and revisit it. But this one, I was like, dang, that chorus was really good. And I really didn't do it justice with the verses. And so I kind of sat back, and I normally write the melody while I'm writing the words. Like those are the most successful ones where that's kind of going along at the same time. But this one was like, okay, I hated what I did for the verses. And I was like, what do I really want to say in the verses? And I was like, I really want to show some visuals. So I just wrote these like super visual long lines that rhymed at the end, but they were really interesting and kind of different. And then I was like, okay, I got to put a melody to this. And I liked it so much more because it was visual. It told the story better. It supported the chorus better. And then the chorus could be all like, you know, it had a hook in it, but it could be a little more metaphorical because I'd put all of the, what we call furniture. I'd furnished the verses really well, I think. So, yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
It's a cool way of looking at it, furniture in the verses.
Yeah. I always like that. Okay, I think it's about all the time we have. It's been a great conversation, and so glad you could bring those songs to our attention, Susan, and for our listeners too. For anyone who hasn't heard them, I'm sure that many of our listeners have already. I'm like sharing that. So special thanks to Susan Cattaneo. Where can our listeners hear more about you and your music?
SusanMusic.com or Susan C Music on Instagram. I actually have a new single coming out, hopefully in June. And I'm so excited. I recorded it with a string quartet.
Oh, wow.
Cool. And it sounds like a James Bond song. And it's really, I'm so excited about it. So it's called Elegy for America the Beautiful. It's a little political, but that's okay.
Sounds like a protest song already.
maybe a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. And we want to hear from you, so please send your comments on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram to @SongTalkRadio, or send us an email, feedback@songtalk.ca. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel for live performance videos and full episodes. Subscribe today to the Song Talk Radio podcast on your favorite podcast provider. And you can find links to all the products, books, and web services we mentioned on the show on our resources page. And wherever you are in the world, please join us online via Zoom at our next Song Talk meetup. It's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend the meetup, bring a song and a lyric sheet, and get constructive feedback from other songwriters. Stop by songtalk.ca for the link. And stay tuned. We will be returning to the Transact in downtown Toronto very soon for the return of our in-person meetups, as it was in the before times. But for anyone who's not in Toronto, do not worry. We will still be running online meetups as well. We're going to be doing a hybrid model there. You can follow me at neilmodi.com. Sherry, where can people find out more about you?
You can find me at sherryjacoby.com and also Sherry Jacoby Music on Instagram.
Awesome. And Susan, your favorite social media platform, I'm guessing, is Insta. You mentioned your Insta.
Yeah, Insta or Facebook. Yeah, those are the two places you can find me.
Okay, thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to stop by the website, songtalk.ca, to browse past shows and find out how you can be a guest. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and keep on writing.